But that's what the stick is for.
Hello, I'm Tom Roy, Director of Public Works here in Simsbury. Over the next half hour, with the help of SCTV, we're going to take some time to explain how we go about determining which roads in Simsbury need to be paved each year, how we go about selecting the roads for that process, the different methods that we use, and how this work is accomplished. We feel that this is a large part of your tax dollar, and we want to show you that it's being spent wisely. So come with me as we start to talk a little bit more about our process. The first step in our paving process here in Simsbury is determining and evaluating the existing quality of each and every roadway in town. We go out every 5 years with a team of independent consultants and evaluate each roadway segment. And a segment is from intersection to intersection along any length of roadway. So a short cul-de-sac is a simple one-segment roadway, where a long road like Firetown is many segments. And we evaluate the quality of the asphalt in each one of those segments independently so that we can come up with an overall rating of the quality of our roadway network. We have about 165 miles of town-maintained roadways here in town, which requires an enormous amount of effort to maintain. In order to keep the status of our roads in the condition that they are today, we need to pave, on average, 10 miles of roads each summer. We're going to go through some of the different paving characteristics today, but the first, as the process begins, with evaluating our roadway. Some of the things that we look for and that come into evaluation are the roadway cracking, as we see here. This crack, which goes transverse to the roadway, is a transverse crack. It's one of the criteria used. Here we see an example of a pothole which has been patched. We evaluate potholes. Over here, if you look again, along the edge of the roadway, these cracks here indicate what is known as edge cracking, which indicate that the shoulder is soft and that there may be some drainage issues. Here we have a section of pavement which is cracked and broken up in an irregular pattern. This form of cracking is called alligator cracking and is one of the more severe roadway conditions that we find. Once we see the roadway starting to crack up this way, the surface is effectively worn out, and it's an indication that water is getting into the base material and is leading to a roadway failure. One of the key important products to maintaining our roadways is to protect the base. The asphalt that you drive on is a simple surface layer which we overlay about every 17 years. But if the base becomes damaged, the cost to repair that is much, much more extensive, which is why we want to maintain our roads rather than replace them. Once we come back from the field with all of our data, the field crews typically will enter the data into the program on an inventory inspection form, and it all goes into a pavement management database. This is a program that was set up by a third-party consulting engineer. We take all of that data, and then we're able to give each road a roadway surface rating, or RSR. This is an example of the program here. Again, it starts off as a simple database, and this showing on screen now is a copy of the inventory and inspection form, which would be filled out by our field crews. You can see down in the lower left is the distressed data. These are the things that we just pointed out on the roadway, whether or not there's edge cracking, alligator cracking, linear cracking, patching, potholes, rutting, depressions, and drainage issues. They're rated with how severe they are and to the extent of the roadway in a percentage. And again, all of this data is used by the system to come up with an average RSR for each segment of roadway, which allows us to determine which repair would be the best and which roads should be repaired and when they should be repaired. You can see here, this is a list of the various reports the system allows us to generate, and it's useful in us determining both the needs for this year and projecting out into the future what we need to expend in the years up to 3 years out from any particular time. We always want to be looking ahead to make sure that there's not a year in the future that would require more roadway paving, and if there is, to make sure that we budget appropriately for it. Shown here is just a simple report. It shows in red, you can see the roadway surface rating. I'm going to tell you now, these are sheets that were from a couple years ago. These are not our most current sheets, so if you see a roadway, no need to get excited. The higher the roadway surface rating, the better. An RSR of 100 is essentially indicating that the roadway has just recently been repaved, and as the road ages, the RSR is going to be reduced. Typically, the surface rating is reduced by about 2 per year. We look at it to see if the road is trending any different than that, and we do repair bans starting with crack sealing all the way down to our more severe resurfacing project based on that RSR. The unique thing about the pavement management database that we use here in Simsbury is that we have a forecasting tool which we can run at various scenarios. We can say, what if we put more money into our roadways this year? What will the result be in the future? What if we're not able to fund the roadways at the rate we'd like to? What's going to be the future consequence? And again, it goes based on some large assumptions, and it's more accurate 1 or 2 years out than it is 6 or 7 years out. But again, it's one of the many tools that we use in making good decisions on our roadways. Shown on screen now is a typical pavement report that we would use in helping to identify which roads need to be repaved. This particular report is done simply by, is organized alphabetically. We can also group our reports based upon repair type, or we can do it based upon the overall RSR, the roadway surface rating. This report here is a couple years old, but it's good and useful in just demonstrating how the system works. Once we get all of the information from our computer database, we always make a point of sitting down at the table, myself and our highway superintendent, Kevin Clemens, and we go through and we make sure that the data we're getting from the computer actually makes sense. And then we look to make sure that we're not hopscotching all around town in the roads that we're repaving. We want to try and repave neighborhoods. That's the most efficient way for our residents, and it's also the most efficient way for our operations, because if you can imagine all of the heavy equipment required to pave a road and the tools and equipment, we don't want them jumping all over town throughout the summer. This is a big part of our operation. It's a big part of making sure that there's a quality check and that we don't just take the numbers out of the computer without putting a level of professionalism to them. And it's these discussions which really, each spring, based upon what our annual budget is, determine what roads we're going to be paving.
Right now we're on Fawnbrook Lane. This is a project that's been targeted for a number of years. However, we coordinate with Connecticut Natural Gas. As you can see, they installed a new main and services to multiple houses. This is a typical smaller subdivision, and right now what we're doing is working on curb repair. As you can see, this curb is remaining. It still does the function of drainage, which is the primary concern. Aesthetics are important, but primarily drainage is the reason for the curbing, to get it to flow into our catch basins. This is an area that was failing, that we're removing. You put a tack coat emulsion to help it bond better. And this area will be reinstalled, backed up with topsoil and reseeded. This is a town of Simsbury crew. We do a lot of the curb repair in-house. It saves money, and we really do a good job. As you can see, they're actually blending in the driveway aprons as they go by, and it gives a nice effect for the final paving. Right now they're blending the driveway apron in, and this should alleviate having to come back to this particular driveway. Every driveway is different. Right now we're on Satcham's Trail, and as we find with many of our roads, we've come across a failed catch basin, as well as the drainage pipe coming across the road was in poor shape. So prior to paving, we rebuild the catch basins. As you can see, this is a newer top. This one was probably done within the past few years that it failed. A lot of the catch basins do fail in town. It's a quiet street. We were able to make temporary roadway to get around. As you can see, there's stone bedding around the catch basin and a pump running. There's a lot of groundwater in this area, and that gives a dry working surface.
Yeah, we'll have to see those ribs down. About 12.
Today we're out here on Arrowhead Drive in Simsbury, and what we're doing is called heat scarification. It's a process we use here in Simsbury where we actually recycle the existing roadway, and that way it can be used to make a stronger roadway base so that when we overlay it later this summer, we'll have a total thicker layer of asphalt which will last much longer. If you can come with me and look over here, you can see that over time this roadway has been overlaid with a thin layer of asphalt. That thin layer is now cracked and broken up. And what we're doing today with this large equipment behind us is we're going to make 3 passes with these large trucks. They're shooting down propane onto the roadway to reheat, essentially melting the existing inch and a half. They're going to then mix it with new fresh liquid asphalt, and we're going to put it back down on the roadway. We're going to roll it and compact it tight, and that's now actually going to be a base for our final product, which we'll do later this summer. You can see this side has already been done. This was done yesterday. It looks like a final product, but we're gonna end up putting a 1-inch layer of traditional asphalt on the top. The one thing that we have to do is in between our 2 processes is all of the drainage structures on the roadway that collect the rainwater. We're gonna have to reconstruct any of these that look like they're in poor condition. The last thing we want to do is to put in this much effort to reconstruct the town's roadway and then within a year or 2 have a structure like this fail, requiring us to dig it up. So a lot of times with this 2-step process, residents will see us in and they'll wonder why we're coming back to dig it up. We found that it works best to dig it up between the 2 processes so we can make sharp roadway cuts, so when we patch where we do our excavation, it'll blend in seamlessly with the final product. When we're done, we want to make sure that we have a nice crown where the center of the road is slightly higher than the edges with a uniform slope, so that'll help drainage and prevent from puddles, which this used to be. You see the nozzle there? That's shooting that liquid asphalt is being sprayed right down, and then you can see how wet it is down there as it hits it. This is now mixing that liquid asphalt in with the chewed up asphalt that's been reheated, and then this is where we're redistributing it back, and this is essentially a paving box like you would have on any standard piece of paving equipment. This is the same area that we were at just a few minutes ago before the heavy equipment went through. At this point, all of the asphalt's been heated up. It's been mixed with new fresh liquid asphalt. The crews have placed it back down. It's still loose. And in another minute or so, we're going to be having the rollers coming through right now. It's going to compact it down so that that'll finalize this first step in our 2-step paving process. That's a 15-ton roller. It's going to make sure that everything holds together nicely so that when we put on that final layer of traditional asphalt within about 3 to 4 weeks, like I said, it's going to last for years. As part of our paving process, the first step that they do before they put down the hot asphalt, you can see over here to my left these streaks of lines. This is called tack coat. It's a material that as it goes down is going to help bond the new asphalt to the existing asphalt. It's a crucial step in getting a good permanent wearing surface. The other thing we can see over here to my right is where the roadway that we're paving ties in to another street. We mill the keyway. We actually come in and cut out the existing asphalt with a milling machine, leaving an 1.5 inch gap so that the 2 roads will come back together smoothly and make for a good transition. It's part of making sure that we get all of the details right. Over here we can see is one of the crew, what they're doing is handwork using a rake to make sure that everything grades into the catch basin properly. We need to make sure all the water coming down the gutter line makes it into the basin. It takes special care, it takes a lot of skill to make sure that all of the asphalt, when it's rolled and compacted, is going to be at the right elevation. This is a dump truck which is delivering the hot asphalt. It's going into the hopper for the paving box. The paving box in the back has a screed which they can adjust to various widths. Due to the size of our roadway, we have to come through and do it in 2 passes. As we get to areas that may be wider, the sides of this will actually open up to allow it to accommodate a wider roadway, or if we have an obstruction and they need to narrow it up, they also have the ability. This is controlling the thickness of the material and laying it down into a smooth mat, which is then going to be rolled by progressively heavy rollers. If you can look at the thickness here, this is the thickness as it goes down uncompacted. As the roller goes over, you may actually be able to see that it's being compressed. One of the critical things that we look for is to make sure that the asphalt is going down hot. We have temperature ranges that we need to make sure the material arrives hot so that it goes down and performs well over time. Here we are looking at the final product of our paving operation. Earlier in the video, we were able to see the heat scarification in this very area where we had a section of really poor quality roadway. We did our heat scarification. Today we've come in, we've put 1 inch of traditional asphalt on top. It's been rolled and compacted so it's smooth. It's going to allow for the proper drainage. Water's going to flow down in here. We put a new catch basin in as part of this project. That's evidenced by the fact that you see that the grass has been removed, and right now what you have is topsoil that's been seeded. Hopefully within a few days this is all going to be back to normal with the exception of a brand new roadway. Another surface treatment process that we use in Simsbury quite frequently is called chip seal. Chip seal is a process where we put down a hot emulsion, or a tar, more commonly referred to as a tar, down as the first step in the process. The hot tar has the ability to fill in some of the cracks and voids in the existing roadway, and immediately following the application of the hot tar, we put down a 3/8 inch stone that covers the tar and becomes the final roadway surface. As you can see here, as soon as the stone is put down on the roadway, we are able to have traffic drive on this surface. We go over it with a rubber-tired rollers to compact and push those stones down into the tar. As traffic drives over it over the next few days, it's actually going to continue to push down the stones into the tar and make for a relatively smooth roadway surface. The texture is a little bit coarser than traditional asphalt, and there is some care that we need to use during that first week or so where we do have the loose asphalt, and we typically post the streets to be at a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit during those periods of having the loose aggregate on the roadway. We typically use our street sweepers in the week following placing the stone to get down as much of that loose stone as we can. During the course of the first year, the surface texture is a little bit more coarse than you would see with traditional asphalt, but at the same time, we found that after the first winter, the snowplows tend to smooth out a lot of the high rough spots, and you end up with a surface which very closely resembles traditional asphalt at an absolute fraction of the cost. We've had great success with this product on more rural roads in Simsbury, typically roads that see a little bit more traffic. We generally have not used this on roads that are designated as our bicycle routes, and we also tend not to use this on roads that are in neighborhoods where the surface being smoother has big advantages as it's used for walking and pushing the babies and baby strollers and riding bikes by kids, and we want to balance the needs of our roadway with the needs of our residents in the neighborhoods. Our final roadway surface process that we use is actually called Cape Seal, and this is really a combination of traditional asphalt and chip seal, kind of combining the best of both worlds. The first step in the process is actually just the same as you would have with a traditional chip seal, and the difference being with a Cape Seal is that we follow that chip seal process with the application of a inch, typically, layer of traditional asphalt. Using this method gives us kind of the best of both worlds in that we get all of the advantages of the chip seal in terms of its ability to fill in some of those small cracks and voids in the existing roadway, fills in some of the irregularities, and provides a good surface for the traditional asphalt to bind to. We use this in neighborhoods predominantly as it has, again, best of both worlds. We have the fine, smooth surface of a traditional asphalt with all of the cost benefits associated with a chip seal. It's a newer process that's being used around the country. We've had some good success with it in the last few years in Simsbury, and again, we predominantly use it in neighborhood roads where we're looking to provide a good wearing surface for all of the uses that it's going to see, not just cars, but all of the other activities in the neighborhood. And we're looking for the longevity associated with the chip seal and the asphalt working together. Each spring, when we have our final list of the roads that are going to be paved for that construction season, we post a list on our website, the Town of Simsbury website, under Departments of Public Works. We do this only in the spring so that we know our final list. This is after the budget has been approved for the upcoming year and things have been finalized. We always do put the caveat at the end of that list that things may change due to weather conditions. If we have a particularly rainy season, we may not be able to pave all of the roads that we're hoping to pave. Conversely, if we have a good season with a lot of good working days and dry weather, we may be able to get a couple of streets added to that list towards the end of the summer. Every time that we go through and we do a paving process, we're making the road in most cases a little bit thicker. In some cases, we actually go through and mill out or cut out some of the pavement in certain areas to help with drainage, including at driveways. One of our goals when we're paving a roadway as it relates to a driveway is to make sure that the water from a rainstorm doesn't end up pooling in front of your driveway, or in worst case puddling and running down your driveway if your house happens to sit lower than the roadway. Town standard with the new driveway should be constructed with an 1.5-inch lip, or it should rise up 6 inches over the first 4 feet as you go from the roadway. If your driveway was constructed properly, as we place the new asphalt, it's just going to blend in and be nearly seamless. Don't worry if for some reason the driveway doesn't match up properly when we're done and the new roadway happens to be at a higher elevation than your existing driveway. We come back in the days after our paving operation is completed and we do what's called a driveway apron. And what we'll do is we'll put traditional asphalt over the first 4 to 6 feet of your driveway to help transition from your driveway to the new roadway surface and prevent any water from ponding, pooling up, or from running down off of the roadway and onto your driveway. You can pave your driveway before or after. Ideally, I think in many cases it's easier if we know ahead of time. If you see the crews working and you let them know that you're thinking about having it done afterwards, it simply allows your paving contractor to match up smoothly to our existing roadway. If you're not able to do that, or if you prefer to have it done first, it's simply a matter of leaving that 1.5-inch lip at the end of your driveway so that we can add new asphalt to the roadway and get a better match. I think personally you're better off waiting until after we're done, because then you know exactly where the roadway is going to be and your paving contractor can match it up and you have a little bit better control over the final product. You're always going to be able to get into and out of your house, and I would just anticipate on the day that they're actually doing the paving that there may be up to a 5-minute delay getting in and out based upon the construction traffic. If we happen to be right in front of your driveway as you want it to get out, again, it might just take us 5 minutes to get the crews out of the way. But as soon as the asphalt is placed down and been compacted with one of our heavy rollers, it's able to see the weight of your car without any detrimental effects. We often get a lot of calls or questions about the black lines or what's a crack seal that we put down on the roadway. Typically after we pave a new roadway, maybe 4 years after we pave, you'll start seeing a few cracks develop to the point that the application of crack seal, which is a rubber material, is going to help that roadway in terms of preserving a good quality asphalt over time. The crack seal is a rubber product that goes down hot into the cracks and it seals them up to prevent water from getting down below the roadway. The problem when water gets down below the roadway is you end up making the roadway base weaker as it's soft and wet, and during the winter time you have the problem of frost building up and popping and making essentially a pothole. So in many ways the crack sealing, and we realize, is not the most attractive thing on a roadway. It's one of the best things that we do in terms of preserving our roadways. Traditionally we'd like to crack seal, like I said, at about 4 years after it's initially paved. Then we would typically crack seal a second or possibly third time over the roadway's 18, give or take, year life. Once we notify residents that we're going to be paving their roadway, a few simple things that can be done to help us out is, first and foremost, make sure that you keep the children away from all of the construction equipment that's going to be operating up and down the roadway. In the days and weeks before we actually pave, you'll see us out there doing a lot of the preliminary work where we'll be excavating and repairing catch basins. We're going to be removing sections of curb, and all of this is done with heavy equipment. And it just tends to attract children like magnets. And as much as we love kids, we want to make sure that they stay away from our work site. Nothing scares our operators more than to see kids getting too close to the operation. We'd love the kids to watch, but if you can do it from the front porch, that would be best. The next thing to do is if you have lawn sprinklers that are placed near the roadway, it's great if you can go out and mark them with flagging or simple wooden stakes or even spray paint. Make sure to let our crews know, because we're not expecting lawn sprinklers to be backed right up against the roadway. And we want to do our best to avoid damaging your sprinkler system, and also to make sure that our guys don't have that conflict in the middle of their operation as they prepare the roadway for paving.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.